Happy Halloween, everyone. A special Halloween edition of Orange and Blue today. And what's scary about this matchup with the Baltimore Ravens? Mace, how you feeling?
Your costume, your face paint is scary. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, I didn't. Yeah, no costume for me this year. I'm just keeping it normal and boring.
You're going as a sports reporter. That's what
Yeah,
you're going
I guess.
as.
Yeah,
Right?
a middle-aged sports reporter. It's what I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm supposed to be the crow, but with my early morning makeup that's not yet done, I look more like King
Okay.
Diamond who overslept. But anyway, it's scary when you think
Yes.
about the Baltimore Ravens because this will be the toughest matchup. This will be if they can beat this team, then, some will stop saying like, well, they haven't beat anybody. And, who are they playing? Look at their schedule, stuff like that. Like, you just got to play who's out there. But I know there's a narrative out there, Mace, that's like, well, they haven't played anybody. Well, the test is now because no one's going to be able to say that after this game.
Yeah. And hey, it's not that they are unbeatable. Look at the Browns last week. Mm-hmm. Look at the Raiders all the way back in week 2. Now, that being said, in those games, Baltimore's offense was still pretty effective, but you look at a couple of those games, and those are games in which the Raiders and the Browns won time of possession. The Ravens, the only time they've lost time of possession and still won was against Tampa Bay, but that was also 2 Baker Mayfield interceptions coming into play. So you look at this challenge, and it starts with the Broncos sustaining possessions and the Broncos not giving the ball away, because you can't afford to have the same kind of mistakes that you had in the last couple of games, especially against Carolina. There isn't a margin for error in this game.
No, and that's why Sean Payton was grumpy Sean after the Carolina game, after a big win. He was grumpy, and I don't blame him, because you got to play cleaner football. You can do that against a bad team, not against this team. And Mace, this is why Sean Payton says this is our toughest challenge.
This will be our toughest challenge to date by far, and this is a real good football team. So, getting back to last week, we're not going to be able to afford a few of those errors against a good team like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now there are going to be some opportunities for the Broncos against the Ravens defense. That's true. But we talk about the Broncos defense being a strength. They played a couple of top 10 offenses way back in the first 3 weeks of the season in Seattle and Tampa Bay. But the last 5 opponents for the Broncos, as their defense has really hit its stride, in total offense ranked 24th, 28th, 23rd, 22nd, and 29th. You're jumping up in class here.
A lot.
We are going to find out some truths about this Broncos defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if they come out and they dominate, then it's all there for the Broncos if the defense comes out and plays well in this game and contains the Ravens. Because if you can contain this offense, which specifically has challenges that go at where the Broncos defense is not elite, like they're elite in against the pass, they're specifically elite in covering outside receivers. So while the Ravens do have, good weapons in Bateman and Zay Flowers, that's not the matchup I think you really worry about. If they do make some plays, you kind of live with it, but that's the matchup where you feel like you're going to take care of business with Surtain, Riley Moss, and then Jaquan McMillan working the slot. But it's Derrick Henry up the middle at a linebacker core that's without Alex Singleton. It's Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews against a defense and a defensive coordinator who over the years, his defenses have struggled against top level tight ends. And now you got 2 of them in this game. That's
all right.
That's where the challenge really comes down to. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson, who partners with Derrick Henry so well because it's that thunder and lightning combination on the ground, except they're not platooning because one's the quarterback. They're out there at the same time. You've got to be ready. You've got to be ready for either on any play.
Yep.
So it's tough sledding here. It's a very specific mix of weapons that's almost designed to go at where the Broncos are maybe good to average on defense rather than elite.
Yes. And that's why I've said that's their strongest where the Broncos are weakest. Doesn't mean they're weak, but as you said, it's where they're less strong and not elite. They're elite at corner. Zay Flowers is great. We love him. We remember him from the Shrine game. He's probably not going to do a whole lot against Pat Surtain, or at least shouldn't, Rashad Bateman's got big size, right? His size is a concern to me. We'll see how Deontay Johnson probably has a couple of catches this game. But it's likely it's Andrews, it's Henry, it's Jackson. I'll throw in a wheel route for Justice Hill because he's got speed. So they have a second running back that they barely use that could do some things against you. But it's containing Henry. I don't want to say stopping Mace. It's containing Henry. It's containing Jackson. And I really don't know what you do against the tight ends.
I mean, it's a 17-game schedule, obviously, but Derrick Henry is literally on a 2,000-yard rushing pace right now.
Again.
Yes. I mean, he's already first ballot Hall of Fame, not just because of his production, but you have to weigh the era in which he's operating, which is an era in which running backs don't get the chance to accumulate huge totals. Well, he has.
Oh yeah.
He's just adding another line to it. I mean, if he ends up sustaining this pace and getting 2,000 yards, we don't just talk about him as a first ballot Hall of Famer. We start talking about him in some really exalted historical company.
Oh yeah.
Quite possibly the best kind of taller back we have seen, I'd say, since Eric Dickerson.
That was consistent, you know. There have been a couple of others, but not many last that long. And even Dickerson didn't last that long. And he had 14,000 yards rushing, but he did it all in like the beginning of his career. Henry's done it now, multiple stops, just keeps going. It was the perfect addition for him. Perfect addition for Baltimore. Yeah.
And I'll just read you some numbers here. The last 6 games for Derrick Henry: 6.0, 8.3, 6.1, 5.5, 11.3, 6.6. That's his average per carry.
Oh, God.
You got to go all the way back to week 1 against the Chiefs when he had under 4 yards a carry. Then the following week against the Raiders, 4.7. I mean, he is a monster right now. I mean, we talk about the greatness he's shown over time, and yet this is even better. And he's doing it at age 30. I mean, he's a marvel. He is the exception to what we know about running backs. Now, you know, he's not a reason to all of a sudden pay running backs a lot of money on a consistent basis, or buy into a lot of running backs after age 28, 29, 30. Make no mistake, like, he is the outlier, and what an outlier he is. And so tough to tackle if you let him get ahead of steam. And that's something Jonathan Cooper specifically talked about yesterday when we caught up with him in the locker room.
I'll tell you, it's tough. I played against him 2 years ago, and man, he's a big dude. I feel like the key is you can't let him get going. You know, once he starts getting that full head of steam downhill, you know, it's going to take about three guys to like bring him down on the ground. So, you know, the key is to meet him at the line of scrimmage or even in the backfield before he gets going, and I feel like that's the best way to take him down.
East and west, not north and south.
Mm-hmm.
And even that's dangerous.
If he goes north and south up the middle, then
Sorry.
Look out. But containing him in the backfield now, we know Jonathan Cooper is good at setting the edge. This is where it's going to be a huge test for Nick Bonito setting his edge on the other side. The other key is getting that interior penetration. This is where the Broncos do have something going because their defensive line has become one of the league's best at consistently bursting through, blowing up runs before they have a chance to develop. That's where Zach Allen has been particularly exceptional this year. So you need beast Zach Allen big time in this game, because if you're going to do what Jonathan Cooper says is key, and he is correct on this, that you've got to stop these runs before they develop, before Derrick Henry gets ahead of steam. It's going to start with the interior guys getting in the backfield, winning their matchups, and being able to diffuse this before it has a chance to ignite.
Yeah. You try to make them one-dimensional with your offense. We'll talk about that. But containing Lamar Jackson, you can't mush rush him now. You used to be able to. And by mush rush, it's just the pass rushers on the edge go as deep as he is, and then they collapse. A lot of the times, pass rushers will try to come around the edge and try to get really deep on a drop back. With mush rush, you just go wherever he's at, you stay even with him, and then you come inside, you collapse on him. Now that he's advanced as a passer, and with those tight ends specifically, I don't even think mush rush will work. So containing Lamar Jackson, something Coop also talked about in the locker room yesterday, it's going to be difficult. Here's what Coop had to say.
It just goes back to your eyes, and you just got to know what type of player he is. You got to know who he is. You got to know he's got a stiff arm. When you get into his space, he can feel you. He's got quick feet. He can move. I mean, he can jump cut faster than anybody. So, I mean, you just got to make sure when you get there, you finish. Your eyes is right. You have to really break down and look at his hips and get him on the ground. Tackling is going to be a primitive this game, and it all just starts with taking that extra step and having your eyes in the right place.
And just to bear out the challenge that is in front of the Broncos here, Lamar Jackson was MVP of the league last year, right? Okay. His interception percentage is the lowest of his career, 0.8%. His sack rate is the best of his career. He's only being brought down on 4.8% of the pass plays. His passer rating is on pace to be the highest of his career. His QBR is on pace to be the highest of his career. The last 2 years, he's completed 67% of his passes, 67.2 last year, 66.9 this year. And oh, by the way, he's averaging 6.2 yards per carry, which is 1.7 yards better than he averaged last year and is above his career average of 6.0. I mean, think about what Lamar Jackson did to get MVP last year and realize that through 8 games, he's doing better than he did last year. Why does Baltimore have 3 losses? It's because their defense is not very good. It's got nothing to do with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. I mean, this is an elite, absolutely elite offense. I would say this is the best offense the Broncos will see this year.
Yep.
I don't think there's much question about that. And you'll see a good one a couple of weeks after this game when the Atlanta Falcons come in. But this group's a problem. And like you've said, it's a problem where the Broncos are not number 1 in the league defensively. Like I'll take the Broncos corners over anybody right now.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I won't take the Broncos run defense specifically between the tackles over anybody, and I will not take the Broncos covering tight ends over anybody. So Lamar Jackson, if he's patient, and again, you can't mush rush him anymore. He's shown that patience. He will beat you from the pocket now.
Yep.
He has grown from where he was as a rookie. This is a truly mature and complete quarterback. And you can't rattle off the elite quarterbacks in this game without rattling off his name. In fact, you could probably say respectfully to a lot of the others, the only one you might take over him right now is Patrick Mahomes, even though his numbers are down this year because of the playoff resume that he possesses. But right now, Lamar Jackson, again, playing the best football of any quarterback in the league.
And it's a different matchup, Mace, or forgive me if this is way off base, but it just got me thinking about Super Bowl 50. And it's a different defense. They're not as good as the Super Bowl 50 defense. And Carolina's not as good as the Ravens offense, honestly. Yeah. But it's that sort of like, okay, strength versus strength. Elite offense against elite level defense. How do you game plan for them? VJ's game plan and the offense doing enough, just like at Super Bowl 50. The offense did enough. You got help from Jordan Norwood on special teams. So can you beat him in most of the departments? And can your offense do enough? That's the question.
Can your offense play keep away? Can your defense play the field position game? Can you get an explosive return from Marvin Mims Jr.? We're waiting for him to break out on special teams, and now is a good time. Can you get more moments like you had last week when you had Tremont Smith and Lucas Kroll knocking the punt back into the field of play and forcing Carolina to go 99 yards? These are things that you've been doing well that you have to keep doing well. It is not just on the Broncos defense to contain Carolina's offense. It's the other phases as well. You have to play a complete game in terms of field position and keep away if you're going to minimize your exposure to this. You can't give them short fields. I mean, if the game starts the way the Carolina game did, and on third play you fumble and Baltimore starting on your side of midfield, this is probably going to be a very long Sunday.
Right.
By the Inner Harbor.
And as we said on yesterday's show, you can't get off to a slow start. You can't. You don't have to play perfect to beat them. You don't have to play perfect at all because football's not that way. But you have to get off to a hot start. You have to make them chase you. I'm glad that you said that because there's certain little mile markers that we'll be looking for during the game. And any of these plays could knock you off track.
Any of them could. It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be a tough game. By the way, it's interesting to talk about this and note that these two teams both started 0-2. They're both 5-3. They've both gone 5-1 in their last 6 games.
Okay.
So I'm not saying like be scared. I'm just saying this is where the rubber meets the road game. This is going to be one where you learn something about the Broncos. And if they go out there and they put the early punch on Baltimore and they control the pace of the game and they get out there with a win. And by the way, a place where since the Baltimore Ravens came into existence, the Broncos have won just once. Back in 2012, the Broncos going in there, the chatter before the game being, oh, is Joe Flacco worthy of a contract extension? And at that moment, it appearing to not be the case when Chris Harris Jr. goes coast to coast late in the first half with a pick 6. That's the only time you've beaten Baltimore. The Broncos lost there in the playoffs on New Year's Eve 2000. Good Broncos teams, bad Broncos teams have gone into Baltimore and been punched out. So it's a tough play. It's a tough place to play. It's a particularly tough place to play historically for the Broncos. If you win this game, you've accomplished something on multiple levels. And then at that point, you win this game, all of a sudden everything is in front of you. Like, as far as like, can you dream big? Possibly. Is it fair to say, Cease, that if the Broncos win this game, that you consider getting a little more aggressive at the trade deadline?
I think so. It's dangerous to wait, but that's a topic of conversation for sure. If they win this one, all right, we're on track, or we're ahead of schedule, or whatever, and go add some more help.
I mean, again, don't want to give up too much unless it's somebody who's in your long-term plans. But it does, I think, make the conversations a little more intense if you get this win, because then all of a sudden it's like you went into Baltimore with a top-ranked offense and you beat them. You won in a place that's been historically nearly impossible to play in for this team. You do that, and you're sitting at 6-3. All of a sudden, the notion of having to go road in the postseason in January doesn't look quite as daunting, in part because you've done it already in Baltimore, and in part because defense does travel. That is one thing. Offense doesn't travel as well as defense does in the playoffs.
Yep. 48 or 50. We have perfect examples of that. 48 or 50.
Well, in the Super Bowl specifically, not as often in the postseason leading up to it. In the Super Bowl specifically, a great defense beats a great offense. There's a lot of history around that. Or even a very good defense beats a great offense. I mean, you look at a lot of the great offenses that have gone into Super Bowls. Atlanta 2016, New England 07, Broncos 13, Rams 01, for example. All these examples. Miami with Dan Marino setting records back in 84. A lot of and Washington 83, which racked up all sorts of marks en route to going 14-2. All of these great offenses got in the Super Bowl, not necessarily against a great defense, but a good one, and got hammered. But all of them made it. So I think there's something about that gap between the championship games and the Super Bowl that I think ends up tilting to favor the defense.
We are fixing to find out.
Yep, we are.
Mace, I'm going to stop scaring you for now.
Yeah, like it's oh man, I'm not big on face paint.
It's 30th year anniversary of The Crow. So, and if people haven't seen it, watch the old one. Don't watch the new one because the new one's terrible. But
has there ever been a remake of a classic movie that was better?
Maybe, but I doubt it because they're classic for a reason, right?
Yeah, it's like, they remade The Crow. I mean, I was thinking about like how they remade Psycho. That, that was a dud. Yeah, it's a classic, you got to leave it alone. Yeah, I mean, my daughter's into horror films. We were watching the original Halloween last week, right? I mean, just stick with the original, man. Stick with the original.
That's right. Stick with the 90s. Anyway, he's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey. Mace, how do people help us out here on YouTube before we're done?
They can like.
They can comment.
They can share.
They can subscribe.
And they can hit that notification bell.
So they can
never miss
vid.
And they can dance too.
Yes.
We can dance. We can dance.
If you want to. He's Mace. I'm C's. OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned. Stay frosty.